Yeah, before the atoms, God was spitting cosmos out of nothing. Formless void and darkness on the face of the deep and the current. Spirit on the water like a surgeon before the incision. Hovered over chaos and precision was his only decision. Let there be light. One utterance in physics had a birthday. Darkness got evicted on the very first word of the first day. Separated light from dark like he was splitting the verdict. Evening into morning, day one done and it was perfect. Second day he drew a firmament dividing what was upper from the under. Water split above below like God was cleaving heaven's thunder. Caught his sky and stepped back. Evening fell in morning answered. Third day coming and the whole creation hadn't even mastered. Waters gathering the seas by pure divine articulation. Dry land rising from the deep responding to his declaration. God said earth and it was earth. Said seas and they were seas. And every border held its place without a question or a reason. Let the vegetation surface. Seed-bearing plants and fruit trees after their own kind. Each one carrying the code of its design. Locked deep inside the fruit rind. Every tree producing after itself. The genome written in the garden before science had a name for what the word of God had hardened. He saw that it was good. 3 words that hold the weight of all approval. Every atom in its place awaiting God's next move. And evening came and morning came and 3 days deep to nothing was a somewhere light and land and living things exploding out of thin air. No blueprint, no material, no quarry and no kiln firing. Just the breath behind the word in the universe conspiring to obey the only voice that ever spoke before there was a listener. The darkness had no category till the light came in and finished it. The void, replaced it with a garden in the cosmos. Day 3 locked and God was nowhere near approaching a hiatus. 6 days total on the ledger, 3 already in the column. Every word he spoke was adding to a world still growing solemn. Not solemn sad, solemn weighty, heavy with the glory of its maker. Every leaf was holding light the way a candle holds a flicker. Every river running carrying the memory of his speaking. Every seed already knowing what it was before the breaking. Before the ground cracked open and the green came pushing upward. God had written the instruction in the dust before the thunder. 3 days done, the earth was dressed and standing at attention, waiting for the sun and moon and stars to get a mention. Yeah. Day 4, he set the luminaries blazing in the dome above the atmosphere. Greater light to govern daytime, lesser one to hold the hemisphere. Stars as well, he scattered them like punctuation in a sentence. Billions deep across the navy dark without a hint of repentance. Signs and seasons, days and years, the calendar was written in the ceiling. Every constellation just a chapter in the story God was revealing. Saw that it was good, the lights were good, the dark between them also good. The whole arrangement hanging into nothing, exactly where it should. Evening in the morning, day 5 rising and the water's getting crowded. Every swimming creature filling seas that God had just allotted. See monsters in the deep end, every creature of the current. Birds across the open sky from shoreline unto shoreline, all concurrent. Be fruitful and multiply, the first command to anything with breath in it. The mandate to exist and fill the earth and leave no death in it. Evening came and morning came, that day 6 and God was building to a crescendo. Livestock, crawling creatures, wild animals, each one a manifesto. Every kind according to its kind. The order was genetic and divine and simultaneous. The taxonomy of Eden wasn't random, it was instantaneous. God saw it and it's good then. Something shifted in the conversation. Let us make mankind a plural landing like a revelation. In our image and our likeness, who is us? The text don't fully say it, but the weight of that plurality been echoing for ages and we still can't weigh it. Male and female, both of them created in the image of a God with no appearance, given dominion over everything without a prior experience. Rule the fish, the birds, the livestock, every creature of the ground is swimming. Be fruitful, fill the earth, subdue it. That's the mandate from the beginning. Every seed-bearing plant across the surface of the whole earth given freely. Every tree with fruit inside it, God provided any minute really. To every beast and bird and creature, every living thing had something on the table. The whole earth was a feast before the fall, before the fable. God surveyed the finished canvas, everything that he had made was very good. Not just good the way day 1 was good, but very understood. The Superlative arrived on 6, the day that man was standing in the garden, the day the whole creation finally had someone to regard it. Evening came and morning came. The 6 was done and 7 was arriving. Heaven and the earth complete, the whole creation finally thriving. Every word it found its object, every day it reached its evening. Every morning answering the last, the pattern never leaving. 6 days in the ledger and the 7th one was different from the others. God was done and what he built was waiting like it knew what was to come next. Yeah. Heaven and the earth and all the host of them were finished in a week of words. 7th day God rested from it all, let that disturb. Not because he's tired, omnipotent, don't fatigue, but because the rest was holy. Blessed the day and sanctified it, set it high and set it solely. Apart from all the other 6 for making, 1 for meaning. The rhythm of creation built into the structure of the week we're living in and breathing. No shrub had yet appeared, no planet sprouted from the field. Hadn't rained yet on the earth, the ground was still concealed. Streams were rising from below and watering the face of the whole ground. God was working with a different method, making man without a sound. Formed him from the dust of the ground, the atom made Adam. Breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, that's the pattern. God got personal with man in the way he did him with the cattle. Didn't speak him into being, bent down low and won the battle. Breathed directly, life to life, divine to dust. The moment that humanity began was intimate and visceral and just. Man became a living soul, not a robot, not a creature, but a being with the breath of God inside him like a feature. God planted Eden eastward, put the man he formed inside it. Every tree was good for food and beautiful beside it. Tree of life was in the middle of the garden, center of the whole thing. Tree of knowledge, good and evil, right beside it, feel the cold sting. That proximity to life and death when neighbors in the garden. One step wrong and everything that's very good would harden. River out of Eden, splitting into 4, the Piscean, Titan, Tigris, and Euphrates all begin from one original source. Before the crisis, Babel and Cushan east of Assyria. Geography of Eden drawn with rivers for meridians. The whole world oriented to the garden as its origin. God put man inside and said work it and take care of it. A purpose and a calling. Every tree is yours to eat from, only one tree is appalling. Tree of knowledge, good and evil, God said touch it and you're dying. Not a threat of warning, like a father to a child who keeps on trying to reach the stove. The love was in the limit, grace was in the boundary. Man had everything and only one thing left outside the foundry. Yeah. One law in a paradise. The ratio of freedom to restriction was enormous, but the serpent would come twisting what was given into torment. Man was in his purpose, had his garden, had his God, had his warning and his morning, had the whole earth at his feet. But something dark was forming, everything was very good. The word said so, the evening confirmed it. But perfection in the hands of choice is always one decision from the serpent. God planted eastward, every tree was architectured for the appetite and ocular. The garden was a doctoral and what it meant to live spectacular. Tree of life dead center, knowledge of good and evil, its adjacent tenant. 2 trees, 1 choice, the whole of human history held inside that acreage. Rivers split the 4 before a single sin split the man. Passion rapping Havala with gold was in the sand. Delium and onyx in the land. God furnished paradise like he was doing it by hand. Dion wrapped around the whole of Kush. Tigris east of Assyria running loose. Euphrates flowing 4 veins from one heart. The earth was just a body and the garden was the juice. God put man inside and said tended, not just resident but superintendent. The dominion was a calling, not a credential. The work was existential, not incidental. Every tree is yours, I'm only locking one behind the gate. Tree of knowledge, good and evil, eat it. And I'm telling you the wages is the weight of mortality. 1 law, 1 tree, 1 test inside infinity of options. God gave him everything and hid 1 thing and called that freedom, not adoption. Then he said it's not good First time good went missing from the ledger. The man was in the paradise and lonely at the edge of everything. Solitude inside abundance is a particular kind of poverty. God diagnosed it before Adam even had the vocabulary. I make a helper, not a servant, not a shadow, not a subordinate reflection, but a suitable counterpart. The word implies direction toward completion. Adam wasn't whole, the garden wasn't either. God brought every creature to the man like he was running an arena. Every beast and bird paraded past, and Adam named them lion, eagle, serpent. Authority through language, he acclaimed them. Whatever left his lips became the creature's permanent identity. The first human act was nomenclature. Adam spoke in things like clarity, but now suitable helper in the parade. Ironic that the serpent walked through and received a name before the woman came in as a blade. That'll touch you later. Adam named the thing that wouldn't do him before he even met the one who'd save him. The order wasn't random, it was ancient. God put Adam under deep sleep, surgical precision. Reached into the architecture of the man and made a lateral incision. Took a rib, not from the head to ruler, not the foot to walk on, but the side. The geometry of that extraction was a declaration of opposition. Built the woman, not formed like Adam from the dust, but built. The Hebrew word implies construction, craftsmanship, and guilt. Brought her to the man. God is the first father walking his daughter down the aisle that was a garden. Let the weight of the image harden. Adam woke from surgery to poetry. Bone in my bones, flesh in my flesh. The first words out of man were not a question, but a reckoning with breath, 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 breath. Yeah. Yeah. She shall be called Isha, because she was taken out of Ish. The naming was a mirror, recognition sharp enough to cut and dish. The truth that they were made of the same material, not separate species, not a different mineral. One flesh split into two, and that's the interval. Therefore a man should leave the institution written in the garden before a single family had existed to be left. The blueprint came before the architect had a concept. Two of them were naked and not ashamed. No performance, no projection, no filtered presentation of a self that needed protection. The vulnerability was total and the safety was structural. The garden was the only place in history where exposure wasn't cultural suicide, where you could be completely what you were and nothing that you weren't, and nothing in the atmosphere would use your openness to hurt. That died when knowledge entered. Funny how the fruit of wisdom was the thing that made him stupid, made him grab the leaves and start constructing an illusion. Now the serpent was more crafty like the word for naked in the Hebrew text. The serpent and the nakedness connected at the neck of chapter 2 and 3. The writer hid a hinge inside the language. Naked and not ashamed, and the crafty one arranged it. Did God really say 4 words that weaponized the question? Didn't lie outright, just tilted what was true enough to test them. The serpent never said eat it, just implied that maybe God was hiding something, planted out like it was seed and let the woman do the running. We may eat the fruit, she said, but not the middle tree. She added, don't even touch it. God never said that. Watch the subtlety. She expanded the restriction in the telling. Already the word of God was being edited before the eating. That's the real rebellion. You surely will not die. The serpent doubled down on surely. First lie in the cosmos, and it came dressed up in sincerity and early. God knows your eyes were open. Technically the serpent wasn't wrong. Eyes did open, knowledge did arrive. The lie was in the song, not in the lyric, but the key it was presented in. The truth without the context is the oldest form of venom dressed in medicine. She saw it good for food, a delight, desirable for wisdom. 3 senses activated simultaneously. The marketing was a schism between what God had said and what the eye confirmed. She took and ate and gave it to her husband, and he ate without a word. Adam was beside her, passive, present, silent, and complicit. No serpent came to trick him. His participation was implicit. In the proximity, he heard the whole exchange and didn't speak. The first act of male passivity would put them both up the creek. Yeah. Every dawn the same goal, put the same mold, same bird, same chord, same river, same road, same fruit, same Lord. And the sameness was the gift and the weight and the staying. Neither aging, neither aching, neither breaking, neither shaking, neither taking anything from time, because time and Eden wasn't leaving, it was laying still as glass. Still is the last breath before a word. Still is a field with no wind, no yield, no bird. And the stillness was the gift in the frame. Edge of a question, neither had the language for. What do you call the ache inside abundance? What's the name of the strain? Impulse in the world with nowhere left to stray. Perfection is the only cage with open doors and no surveying of its own walls. Cause the walls are made of yes, every yes. So total, so perpetual, so all-encompassing, the obeying. Had no weight, no cause, no friction. And obedience without friction is just breathing. The commandment in the swaying. Taught it all away from it. Indistinguishable in the world where weight doesn't exist. Adam naming beasts already named, already staying in their places. The lion in his morning spot the river in his ancient, cut the fig in his familiar weighing. Against the palm Eve picking fruit, the same hand motion, same branch, same reach, same color, same conveying of the same taste to the same tongue. And the tongue remembered everything in memory without surprise. It's just replaying. A recording. You cannot hunger where the table never empties. You cannot thirst where the river keeps on staying. Full. And the fullness was the fasting of a different kind. The feast so constant, it'll stop the praying for it. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it. The commandment landed in the garden with no room for the displaying of its fruit. How do you fill what's already full? How do you multiply into a word that keeps on staying? Complete without you. They lay together in the garden, real and present in the question underneath the swaying. Was what receives, what we give, what holds, what we become. What is the point of the pouring and the weighing? When the cup was full before we poured, the body knew before the mind. The ancient restless underland, hum of something unresolved. The tree was not just fruit, it was the only door inside a house of endless staying. It led to somewhere else, and somewhere else was not yet named. But the wanting of it was already framed. Yeah. She came back different, eyes wide and glistening, carrying something in the posture like a secret in the sentence in the known. Adam felt the shift before she spoke. The atmosphere changed, the way it feels was different right before the storm starts showing. She said, I ate it, 3 words that held the weight of everything unraveling, and everything about to start is going. He said, you what? And she said, I ate it, and the repetition was the cruelest instrument. The echo kept on growing. She said, the serpent said we wouldn't die. She said, my eyes are different now. She said, there's something in the knowing that you don't have yet, and that was the most dangerous word in the garden. The invitation was already glowing in the fruit she held toward him. The same hand got it built from his own rib. Now the instrument of overthrowing everything. Adam looked at her and saw bone of his bones, the flesh of his flesh. Still the one worth the poetry, still worth the going through whatever came next, and that was the trap. The love was real, the logic was corrupt, the tenderness was the towing line that pulled him off the cliff. He didn't ask the serpent, he didn't pray, he didn't run, he stood there in the knowing that this would cost him everything, and took it anyway. The silence of his choosing was the loudest thing the garden heard, and the Owen started there. He bitten and the biting, something ancient snapped like timber in the dark, the cracking and the breaking and the slowing of the world they know. The birds felt it, the river heard it, the trees at Adam named leaned in like they were grieving and not knowing what to do or what they witnessed. The nakedness arrived, not gradually but like a verdict, instantaneous and glowing with shame. The same eyes that had seen each other purely now saw a threat and self and distance, and the distance kept on growing. Eve said, what have we done? And Adam's answer was his hands already grabbing fig leaves, weaving, covering, and sewing the costume for a catastrophe. Fig leaves for a fracture that would need a skin of blood, a sacrifice, a guy worth owing everything. They hid among the trees, they named, and irony was thick as pitch. The garden that was home was now a place worth not knowing. Then the sound of God walking in the cool of the day, and the where are you to follow was the most devastating hailing. Not because God didn't know, but because Adam didn't. Answering and meant confessing everything, and the confessing kept on going. eyes of both of them flew open, and the first thing that they saw was themselves. Ironic that the fruit of knowledge made them see less, not more, just self. Grabbed the fig leaf, sewed them into coverings. The first human industry was fashion born from shame. They built the wardrobe for their failure, gave it a name. They heard the sound of God walking in the cool of day. The Hebrew says the wind of the day. God arriving like a weather pattern, casual and intimate, and they ran away. Hid among the trees, they hid inside the garden God had given them. Inside the gift to hide from the giver, that's the lay of sin. Where are you? God called out and let it echo. Omniscient asking for a location. The question was a navigation, it was pastoral. I heard your voice and I was afraid. Fear arrived the moment knowledge did. The first emotion after wisdom was a terrified and naked kid. Who told you you were naked? God already had the defendant in the verdict. The question was a scalpel, not a search, precise and perfect. Have you eaten from the tree? Adam's answer was a masterclass in cowardice disguised as explanation. The woman that you gave to be with me, deflection wrapped in accusation. She gave me and I ate 4 words that threw the woman and the God who made her both beneath the chariot. The first man's first instinct was to sacrifice the intimate. God turned to the woman. What have you done? She said the serpent completed the circuit. Blame ran downhill from the man to the woman to the serpent like a verdict. God turned to the serpent last and didn't ask a question. And the deceiver gets the floor. The only proper response is not a session. Cursed above all creatures, belly on the ground and dust to diet for eternity. The most cunning thing in eating got the most severe, the fraternity of the fallen enmity between your seed and hers. He'll crush your head and you will strike his heel. The war was said in words before a single battle. The proto-evangelium buried in the curse. The first gospel hidden in the worst verse. God was writing the remedy inside the hearse. To the woman, sorrow multiplied in childbearing desire toward your husband. He will rule the symphony of equals. Now a hierarchy of wounds to Adam. Curse is the ground on your behalf. Thorns and thistles sweat your bread until you're back inside the math. Dust to dust, the circle is the epitaph. Adam named his wife Eve, mother of all living. Inside the curse he found a reason to keep giving her a title about life not ending. God made garments out of skin, something died to cover what the fruit uncovered. Grace arrived in animal skins before they understood it. Sent them east of Eden, cherubim and flaming sword between them and the tree. But the seed inside the curse was already a guarantee that the heel would meet the head, the dust would meet the divine. The exile was the prologue and the garden was just line one of a longer design. Before he sent them out, he clothed them not with words, not with light, not with the same breath that built them, but with skin and the skin. Required a death, first death in the history of breathing. Something innocent, something unnamed, something without sinning. Fell in the garden so that what had broken in the garden could be covered in the covering in the beginning. Of the pattern with the same moment. God was the first priest, the garden was the first altar, the blood was the first spinning. Of a thread that will run through every Abel, every Passover, every Levitical morning, every lamb and the thinning. Veil between the holy and the human getting thinner with each drop until the thread ran all the way to the 20. Of God and flesh in Bethlehem, the skin God made in Eden was the signature, the first draft of the penny. Of innocence on the guilt, the innocent absorbing what the guilty earned, the substitution and the winning. Through losing, the fig leaves were religion, self-constructed, self-sufficient, self-congratulating in the spinning. But that fig leaf logic has been the human project ever since. You cannot cover a fracture with your own beginning. God tore it off not cruelly, but the way a surgeon removes what the patient thinks is healing in the skinning. Of the animal was the sermon, something that's to die to cost. The nakedness is blood, and the blood in the beginning. A mercy or the same event. God held the skin and Adam felt the weight of it, the warmth and the thinning. Of the distance between what he done and what was being done for him. The grace was not thin, it was winning. Against the shame, before the shame had finished speaking. Eve wrapped in something that had lived in the beginning. Of an understanding settled in the chest that innocence transferred is not innocence restored. It's the penny of a promissory note on the door of every exile. This is not the end, the blood is not the ceiling. It is the floor. Every sacrifice from here will be a shadow of the one who wore the skinning. Of the whole human failure on his back outside Jerusalem, the lamb who needed no covering, doing the covering. The skin God made in Eden was was the first word of a sentence finished on a cross. And the beginning. East to eat in the air, hit different, thicker, colder, harder than the gold. Soft, warm, familiar of every garden morning they had known. The thorns were not a metaphor, they were a physical address. The sweat was not a symbol, it was salt. It was the bone. Deep ache of a body learning labor in the word that didn't want to yield. The ground that once obeyed the word alone now fought back, bristle, pushed the seed down wrong, root wrong, bore wrong. And the wrongest had a texture, had a tone that neither of them had a category for. In the garden everything was given, east of it everything was grown. From scratch, from sweat, from scratching in the cycle of the trying and the failing and the trying and the grown. Of muscles learning what the curse felt like from the inside. But Adam reached for even in the reaching and the known. Weight of up beside him in the dark was the first grace outside the garden. Bone to bone, still home. Inside a world that stopped feeling like one. The eggs I couldn't sever with the rivets on the chromosome threaded them together with the anchor and the altar and the only temple left when God had closed the dome. A Vita ceiling over them, they had each other, and the thorns was more than paradise alone. Without the heartbeat of another, they built and broke and built again from clay, from stone, from timber in the hone. Of every skill from zero in the word that offered nothing free. The garden was a tutor and the lesson had been thrown away with the expulsion, but the hands remember something of the tendon in the knowing in the prone position of a heart that bows before it plans. They prayed without a temple, without a priest, without a throne, just the open sky above the cursed ground and 2 mouths breathing the same air, 2 voices, the same tone, reaching upward. The intimacy of the exile was a different kind of sacred than the garden, a more honest kind. In paradise you walk with God in the cool of the day. In the wilderness you call his name into a modest sky and wait. And the waiting was the worship, and the worship and the waiting was the closest and the honest thing to what they lost. 2 people choosing each other in the dark is its own garden, its own promise. Yeah. And something changed. And something changed inside the unchanging. A fullness in the chest of evil flutter and a weight of particular impressive. Kind of presence that was not our own. Life inside life, the mathematics of the blessing. Arriving not in paradise, but in the exile, in the thorns, and the sweat, and the groan, and the confessing of a broken world to be fruitful and multiply. That hunger unanswered in the perfect garden, like a question without addressing. Now answering itself in the imperfect one. The commandment didn't need perfection, it needed the essence of 2 people still reaching for each other, still choosing, still persistent. The months of the progressing barely were the slowest sermon either of them, and witnessed the body preaching what the mouth kept second guessing. That God was still providing, still creating, still present in the exile, still addressing the original commission through the biology of the broken, then the labor and the pressing through something that had never happened in the history of human bodies. The first birth and the blessing and the terror of it simultaneous. Eve had seen animals birth, but this was hers, this was the expression of the image of God through pain, through blood, through the tearing and the opening and the distressing beauty of a life arriving. The cry was the first new sound east of Eden, not the garden's curated blessing of ambient perfection, but a raw, unpolished, uncontainable human cry. And the cry was the confessing that life was still winning. Eve held him and said, I have gotten a man with Yahweh, the possessing, and the crediting was simultaneous. I have gotten means I labored, I acquired, but with Yahweh means the blessing was collaborated. She didn't say I made him, she didn't say God gave him, she said both the human and the pressing. Into the divine, we're in the same breath, in the same name, in the same moment of the professing. Cain and Adam looked at what the exile had produced, and the curse and the grace were the same morning dressing. The same child, the commandment fulfilled, not in the garden, but beyond it, life multiplying through the blessing. Adam called his sons of dust beside the altar stones and said the God who skinned an animal to cover what we broke is still worth sowing. Your best into, not the remnant, not the leftover, not the fruit you picked and held and put back down the firstborn that you're growing. He said, I learned this east of Eden, what you plant for God returns, what you hoard for self starts rotting in the knowing. But that truth caused me to guard it. Both sons standing in the same low light, the same soil underfoot, the same seed that is showing. Landing different, can't herd, bring your best, and thought I am my best. The harvest is my hands, my rows, my seasons, worth the hoeing. Every furrow cut by my own back, the yield is the biography of my labor and my going into the cursed ground and pulling something living from it. The hours loud as thunder in the chest of mine was overflowing. Before the offering left his hand, the fruit he planned to bring was already weighted wrong. The scale was already showing. Can't knock God, he bring the fruit, but not the first, not the fat, not the portion that cost the bringing in the owing of the debt of existence. Just enough to look like giving while the heart kept his best back in the hoarding and the sowing of resentment in the margins. Abel heard the same instruction differently. The flock, the firstborn lamb, the fat, the glowing life of it, not mine. He thought the breath inside this animal arrived before my name, and it the bestow was God's before the tenant was mine. So the first and best go back. The altar is the confessing and the throwing open of the hands. Not payment, not performance, not the price of a transaction, but the reaping and the sowing. Return to the one who owns the field. Same father, same altar, same evening, same instruction, same wind blowing through the same trees. Two brothers stood beneath, and the divergence was invisible. A seed beneath the soil and growing unseen. Both slept that night, not knowing morning held a verdict, and the verdict had been sowing itself in the quality of what each brother loved. The hand reveals the harvest of the heart before the crowing of the rooster. Abel dreaming of the firstborn, Cain already sorting yesterday's fruit, picking, middling, and not throwing the best of it toward heaven. The root of what would happen was already in the ground, already growing. Hey. Abel rose at dawn and cut the firstborn from the flock, the fat, the premium, the price, the cream, the choice, the cream of the adoring. Laid it on the altar and the smoke climbed vertical like language, finding heaven like a prayer that knew its flooring was the chest, not the lips. Yahweh had regard for Abel in his offering, regard the word for seeing past the storm. Of the surface to the center, God looked through the lamb and found the heart of Abel open wide and pouring everything it had. Cain came and laid the fruit of the ground, the middle harvest of his labor in his mourning. Was already different, cooler, calculated, fruit selected, not for cost, but for the looking and the scoring of a transaction. Enough to feel like worship, not enough to be it. The gap between the gesture and the door was the width of everything. Yahweh had no regard, the silence of that nothing was a verdict in the floor. More devastating than a curse, just the absence of the look to being passed over in the roar. Quiet of it in Cain's chest, he watched the smoke from Abel's altar climb and watched his own smoke hugging the floor, going nowhere. The physics of rejection in an altar fire, and Cain's face fell to falling was the storm of the womb before the weapon. God said, why are you angry? Why is your face falling? The questions for adoring. An exit ramp simultaneously. If you do well, will you not be lifted? The conditional was the last merciful restoring before the hinge swung. Sinners crouching at the door was agricultural, the crouching like a sea before the flooring. Breaks in the root descends, it desires you, but you must rule the must was the last offer before they ignore it. Became the answer. Cain heard the warning, the way it filled his rain already falling and soaking in the story. Was done, the ground was already saturated with resentment. There was nowhere left for mercy to be pouring into. He looked at Abel warm and luminous from heavens, yes, and felt the cold of his own flooring against his cheek in the distance. Between accepted and rejected was the field, and the field was already calling in the roaring of the silence, and that gap became the plan. Sin stopped crouching, stood up, walked beside him toward the door. Cain said, let us go to the field, the casual low of his voice, the gentlest blow, the invitation sown in brotherly tone, the blade beneath the sowing. Abel heard it as I walked the way a younger brother hears a summons from the one he trusts, the bond of knowing of each other since the womb. They walked the furrows, Cain that cut the rows, the thorns, the curse, the ground and going through it together. Felt familiar, felt like every other field day to Cain's jaw tightened in the slowing. of his steps revealed the way. Maybe Abel said the altar wasn't about the yield, it was about the showing. Up with open hands, the harvest of the heart, not just the ground. And Cain felt that land the way a seed lands, sowing itself into the one raw place. He said, you don't know what it cost to till a cursed earth every season going into the thorns and pulling fruit from ground that fights you back, the labor and the own. I give from what the ground allows me, and the ground allows me less than God allows you in the growing. Resentment in that sentence was the root, the weed, the thing beneath the soil already overgrown. Abel said, brother, the ground is not the problem, the hand that holds the offering is the sowing. What the altar reads, and Cain heard that is the deepest cut, the truest, most unbearable unknown, because it was accurate. Envy is the only weed that grows on someone else's watering in your own home, and there's nothing to uproot it. Cain looked at Abel, and the looking at already left the field of brothering and gone into something older, darker. The body was the field, the anger was the plow, the rising and the throne of everything that crouched behind the door, now loose and moving. Abel didn't see it coming, trust the soul of his own undoing. The field went quiet, the way a harvest field goes quiet when the reaping and the mowing stops mid-row. The blood hit the ground, and the ground that had been cursed to fight the tilling and the growing. Opened his mouth and drank it, and the drinking was the loudest act of worship in the cosmos. And the known went upward. The voice of your brother's blood is crying from the ground, and the ground that Cain has spent his life sowing. Adam knew his wife. Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bore a son and said, I've gotten a man with the help of Yahweh. First birth in history, and Eve made it a theology. Named him Cain. The word means gotten, acquired, possessed, and then the naming was a warning nobody addressed. Then she bore his brother Abel. The word means vapor, breath, or whisper nothing. 2 sons, 2 names, one of them already had a ceiling on his coming. Abel kept the flocks and Cain worked the ground. The sons of Adam split the labor of the curse they father found. In the process of time, they both brought offerings. Cain from the fruit of the ground, Abel from the firstborn of his flock, and the fat portions of crowning. Yahweh had regard for Abel in his offering, but for Cain in his offering he had none. The text don't say exactly why, and that ambiguity's a gun loaded at the reader. Was it the offering itself, the heart behind it? The firstborn versus whatever Cain decided to provide it. Abel brought the fat, the firstborn, the best, the first, the costliest. Cain brought from the fruit. The text says nothing about the quality of his interest. Cain was very angry and his face fell. The first recorded human emotion after shame was jealousy, dressed up as wounded pride and going well. God saw the face and asked him why? Why are you angry? Why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? That's the calling. Sin is crouching at the door. The metaphor was a predator, a lion at the threshold of his will. Desire to master it was the antidote, but Cain was standing still. His desire is for you, but you must rule over it. The same language used for Eve and Adam now applied to Cain and what was stalking. God gave him the exit ramp, and Cain kept walking. Talked to Abel, rose up in the field and killed him. The premeditation in the conversation chilled him. The text says Cain spoke, but doesn't say what. The silence of that missing dialogue is the loudest thing in the cut. We don't know what words he used to get his brother to the field. We just know that Abel followed, and that trust became the shield that Cain used against him. The intimacy of brotherhood weaponized. The safest relationship in the world became the place where Abel died. Rose up, 2 words that carry all the weight of human violence in its first expression. Premeditated, physical, and final, no question. The ground that Cain had worked his whole life, drank his brother's blood. The irony was architectural. The farmer killed and fed the mud with the only thing that Cain could never grow from it, a soul. The ground received what Cain had offered God, and God had not extolled. First murder in the history of breathing, and the victim was a worshiper. The war on Abel was a war on what he represented. That's the furtherer. Yahweh said, where is Abel? Babel. Second time in scripture, God asked for a location. First was Adam hiding in the garden, now it's Cain performing his oration. I don't know. The first lie told directly to omniscience. The audacity of ignorance performed before the one who watched it happen. That's a particular defiance. And my brother's keeper. Shoma in the Hebrew, the same word for the gardener, the tender, the protector. Can't use this job description as a deflector. He was supposed to be the keeper of the ground, of the gift of the brother walking next to him. The alibi he offered God was built from his own curriculum. The irony was a conviction. Can't argue his innocence using the language of the calling he had just betrayed inside the contradiction. What have you done? God didn't ask where is the body, he didn't ask what happened, didn't investigate. He asked, what have you done? Because doom was already on the plate. The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. The blood had a voice, the soil was a witness, the crime scene was a congregation gathered round. Abel was vapor in his name, but permanent in his blood. The breath that died became the loudest thing in Eden's neighborhood. Now curse from the ground, not just curse from the thing he loved. The punishment was personal. God reached into the center of his world and shoved. The ground will no longer yield its strength to you. God took the one relationship Cain had cultivated and turned it to a stranger. Stripped the familiarity from the labor. Fugitive and wanderer, the farmer lost the field, the brother lost the bond, the worshiper lost the presence. Everything that constituted Cain was gone in a single verdict. And Cain said, my punishment is more than I can bear. First man in scripture to tell God the consequence was unfair. You driven me from the ground, it grieved the soil before the presence. Lamb before God, the hierarchy of his mourning was the autopsy of what he worshipped all along. From your face I'll be hidden, buried underneath the property. Complaint is the real loss. Exile from the ground was bad, exile from the face was the albatross. Whoever finds me will kill me. The violence he invented became the violence he anticipated. The murderer projected his own logic on the world he just contaminated. Yahweh said not so, and put a mark on Cain. The most debated symbol in the text, and God never explained it, just deployed it like a base that can't be named. Protection for the guilty. The same God who heard Abel's blood still wouldn't let the world become Cain's executioner. The mercy was offensive and deliberate. Cain went out from the presence of Yahweh and settled in the land of Nod. Nod means wandering. He built a city in a country named for having no fixed coordinate. With God, built a city, named it for his son. The homeless man became an architect. The wanderer laid foundations in the wandering. The irony was a good project. Lamech came and took 2 wives and boasted 77. If Cain's revenge was 7, and I'm 10 times that. The map of violence had already divided heaven. Saw the city again. Enoch saw the city, it came. The torchlight, and the music, and the market, and the warning, and the having, and the more. Saw Lamech take 2 wives and boast of murder like a credit score. The violence was the currency, the bloodshed was the law. That built a reputation in the streets. He felt the pull, the gravity of everything a generation was living for. The appetite, the acquisition, the acclaim. He was a man, not a monument. He felt the warning at his core, but something underneath the warning was a warning of a different way. The hunger that the city couldn't store. Enough for to satisfy. He tried to alter, tried to mourn it, tried the turning of his face toward something more than what the market offered in the first morning. He walked with God, he came back different than he was before. Not louder but deeper, not wider but taller. Something in the chest that opened like a door that he hadn't known was there. The city offered everything and everything left him at the shore of his own emptiness. But one morning with the face of God and something was deposited he couldn't quite ignore. Spin, he went back the next morning and it happened again. The return was more than the day before. The compounding interest of obedience. Every morning a deposit, every walking a withdrawing from a store. That didn't diminish, he watched his neighbors chase the city, chase the name, chase what Lamech bragged about and swore by and come back empty every evening. The transaction of the world was loud and bright and poor, and the transaction of the altar was quiet and invisible and rich. 65 years, then Methuselah and more was added. The sun changed something in him sharp, and what he give us 300 years therefore. He walked, not away from the world, but through it different in the same streets, the same sin, the same rule of Lamech's generation. But Enoch moving through it like a different frequency, a signal through the noise in the war of the ordinary. Then God took him, and the taking was the final compounding, the ultimate therefore of a life that kept returning to the same face. He walked so close, so long, the distance closed, and there was no more. The question God asked Enoch wasn't why, it was what did you find in the walking that the world beside you couldn't offer in the having and the holding? And the answer was the question. What you find in God is God, and God is not a commodity, not a transaction, not a folding of a return on an investment, but the return itself, the distinction between worshiping God for what he gives and withholding. God is the gift, is the whole of human spiritual history compressed. Enoch crossed that threshold, and the threshold kept on holding open. Obedience is not a currency, it's a direction, and the direction compounds the way light compounds on gold unfolding in the morning. Every step toward the face of God returned not a blessing, but a closer face, and a closer face withholding nothing. The world around them operated on the logic of the scarce. The more you take, the less remaining in the molding. Or the self around that scarcity produces the lamage, but the economy of God inverts the math, the giving and the holding. Open of the hand returns more than the grasping and the hoarding. Enoch watched the city folding, wealth into the chest, and watched the fail to fill the chest, and the failure was the teaching and the scolding of a generation that had chosen noise over presence. The presence is the rarest currency, the most consoling and the most expensive. To be fully known and not abandoned is the thing every human transaction is withholding by design, because no human has enough of it to give. But God, who's knowing, has no bottom, and who's holding has no limit, gave Enoch 3 centuries of being fully seen, the compound interest of the enrolling. And that knowing was a richness that made every other asset look like debt, then the consoling. Conclusion of the walk arrived not as a destination chosen, but as a distance closed to controlling. Variable was not Enoch's merit, but the direction of his feet. You don't arrive at God by qualifying, you arrive by the strolling of a consistent orientation, sustained past the point where the world had stopped cajoling. You back, and he was not for God, took him. The took was not a taking, it was the enrolling of the walker in the destination. The walk didn't end it, resolved the way a chord resolves its dissonance by finally tolling. When men began to multiply on the face of the ground, daughters were born and the sons of God saw beautiful. And took the verb was not a courtship, it was removal. Whoever they chose, the choosing was the problem. Desire was the doctrine, appetite had become its own approval. Nephilim were on the earth, the mighty men of old, men of renowned fame was the criterion. Celebrity, the rafter holding up a civilization built on violence, dressed in honor. The Nephilim was celebrated, and the celebration was the eulogy. A culture that worships its giants is already writing its own obituary in the corner. Yahweh saw the wickedness of man was great, not regional, not occasional, not a pocket of corruption in an otherwise functional creation. The rod had reached the continental. Every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually, not every action. Every intention of corruption wasn't behavioral, it was existential. Only and continually left no room for mitigation. The adverbs were the verdict, the modifier was the murder weapon, the grammar was the sentence. And Yahweh was sorry, not chiming the Hebrew, to grieve to feel the weight of a decision pressing on your sternum like a stone. You cannot lift and cannot leave and cannot sentence. Sorry that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart, the same heart that breathed into the nostrils of the dust, now broken by the architecture of its own image. The gift of choice returned as a weapon, freedom handed back as violence. The image of God and man now pointed at its origin like a mirror cracked in vintage. I will blot out man, whom I created, blot the word for erasure. God describing humanity as a manuscript corrupted past the margin of correction, past the editor's permission. From the face of the ground, face the same word used when darkness covered the face of the deep. In the beginning, creation running backward toward its own original condition. Man and beast and creeping things and birds. The corruption of one species contaminated the ecosystem. Entire dominion works both ways. A man attracted subjects through the fire. The animals caught inside the spiral of the human. The whole creation groaning underneath the weight of what the image bearer had become accomplice to the empire. For I am sorry that I made them 7 words that are the heaviest sentence in the cosmos. God grieving his own masterpiece. The pathos was not weakness, it was the inverse of indifference. Only the one who loved completely could be shattered by the thing he loved completely. The grief was proportional to the depth of the first verse. The world had reached the terminal. The diagnosis was unanimous. The prognosis was the flood. The only prescription left was the kind of mercy that looks like its opposite. But the chapter didn't end on sorry. Grief was real, but grace was realer. God was broken by the world and simultaneously already architecting its deposit. Because the sentence after sorry is the hinge. The whole of human history swings on, but Noah 2 words that interrupted the obituary of a species with a name. But Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahweh. In the Hebrew root of grace, the whole future of everything that breathes balanced on one man's undeserved claim. Noah was righteous, blameless, and his generation blameless didn't mean sinless. It meant integrated, moving toward his maker without deviation in the corporate. Decay blameless among the broken is a different weight than blameless in the garden. The benchmark was the ruin, he was walking through. The context was the qualifier. Noah walked with God, the same epitaph carved over Enoch, who was taking the highest compliment the text could give, and it was prior. God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me like a case. Already heard a verdict, already rendered. The judgment was administrative, not exploratory. The earth is filled with violence, through them the instrument of destruction was the creation itself. Humanity was simultaneously the crime scene and the coroner. I will destroy them with the earth, with not from not off the preposition. Made the earth complicit partner in the verdict, co-defendant in the order. Make yourself an ark, the first comparative, and it was construction. The answer to a world built on violence was a man building in deliberate disorder. Go for wood, the only time this word appears in all of scripture. Specific to this moment like a password that expires the morning after the water. Cover it with pitch inside and out, the waterproofing was the theology. Grace applied from both directions, or the outside pressure finds the mortar. 300 cubits long, 50 wide, 30 high. The dimensions were divine. God was the engineer and Noah was the one who had to fill the order. Set the door in its side, the window faced the sky. The only view was upward. The door was lateral, the same geometry that pulled the rib from Adam's border. But I will establish my covenant with you, covenant. The first time the word lands in scripture. And it landed in the flood, the most intimate word in the theological dictionary, born inside the most violent chapter. Grace introduces itself at the worst possible moment, like it's been waiting for the bottom of the decimal. Two of every kind to keep them alive with you. The animals were incidental cargo. They were covenant beneficiaries. The rescue was categorical. Noah did this 3 words, the hinge of everything. The simplest sentence carrying the heaviest freight. He did this all that God commanded, period. No argument, no negotiation, no second opinion. The world was laughing and Noah was measuring go for wood by the empirical word of a God he couldn't verify. Building toward a flood that hadn't happened. Comparing for a rain with no meteorological precedent. The hammer was his homily. The pitch is theology. The rooms is eschatology. Noah built the systematic inside something nautical. Every plank was a prayer, every prayer was a plank. The whole thing floated on the faithfulness of the one who made the nautical laws that would carry it. The ark didn't need a captain, it needed a covenant. No, wasn't sailing. He was being carried by something categorical. Came in the quiet. Okay. God came in the quiet, the cool, the familiar still of the morning, before the world resumed its noise and its need and its insistence. But the word was not familiar. I will destroy the earth, and the destroyer landed heavy. and persistent. In the chest like a stone that found the bottom. Noah had walked his presence for decades. Knew the enlisting of his mornings into the rhythm of the walk. But this morning the rhythm broke, and the twisting of the sentence in his chest was real. How God said water from the sky, a flood subsisting. On no precedent, no memory, no frame. Noah had never felt rain, never seen a listing of clouds that carry consequence. The sky was always just the sky, and the insisting of God that it would open and consume the land was the first collision between the existing world and the coming one. Build me an ark, 3 words that landed in the persisting silence after destroyed like a blueprint. Drop into a mind with no table for it. No enlisting of prior experience. What is an ark? God said 300 cubits, 50 wide. The listing of dimensions for a thing that had no name, yet in human experience the twisting of the rational around something irrational was the first labor. No repeating back, the insisting. Numbers like a student memorizing a language he doesn't speak yet. The persisting of the construction past. The comprehension was itself the lesson. Go for wood, the pitch. The listing of rooms and decks and a door set in the side and the door detail. The enlisting of the rib geometry again. The same lateral opening God used in the garden. And the existing pattern underneath the instruction was the comfort thing. Covenant the word, the insisting presence of a God who binds himself to the thing he asked. Noah felt the twisting. Confusion give way, not the understanding, but the trusting. Trust is the persisting. Beyond the understanding, not the replacement of it. The yes rose from somewhere below. The listing of objections below the calculating mind, below the part that needed reasons. The enlisting of the will before the intellect arrived. Faith is always the architecture that precedes the existing structure. And Noah said yes, and the yes was the art before the art was the insisting. He went to his neighbor. He went to his neighbor first, the one whose fence they mended, whose harvest they compared, whose years of knowing ran deep enough to trust God. Told me to build a vessel for a flood, and the slowing of the neighbor's face from warm to careful was the first price of flood. The neighbor said to going, blink of his expression, the whole paragraph of nothing, water from the sky overflowing. Everything Noah said, and the neighbor looked at the unmarked sky. The cloud, the showing of a morning with no evidence, and felt a particular pity of a man whose friends unknowing had become a project. I have timber pitching, need your hands. The sowing of the asking to the decades of friendship was the most exposed that Noah felt. The growing vulnerability of needing someone to believe what you believe before the proof arrives, and knowing they won't. The neighbor said I had my own roads, my own season, my own going. And came gentle refusal, the most hollow and kind of softness of it showing more clearly than contempt with that the verdict was final. Noah kept going, door to door, the same seed, the same resistant soil, the same slowing the faces from open to careful. Some laughed, some pitied, some kept hoeing without looking up. The indifference was its own theology, a world so knowing of itself, so certain of its permanence it couldn't hear the crowing of a coming dawn that would drown the certainty. The structure kept growing against the skyline, daily more visible, daily more the glowing monument to either madness or obedience. In the town it stopped not knowing which isolation is not the absence of people, it's the presence of people not seeing what you see. And Noah moved through crowds of the not seeing the agreeing world that had agreed on its own permanence. Back to the timber, back to the freeing labor of the obedient. The plank that no neighbor helped cut was worth the being cut alone. God watches with no crowd witnesses, and the watching was the agreeing. He stood on the unfinished hull, and the height of it was the first sermon before a word left his lips. The elevation and the view of everything beneath him was the argument. Repent, he said, the water is coming. The world you think you know is ending in the crowd below. It gathered the way crowds gather around the unusual, the residue of curiosity, not conviction. Someone said, Noah, what's the word today? And the laughter broke through. The way laughter breaks through a crowd that has already pre-decided the issue. He said, God saw you. Every intention, every morning, every thought, only evil continually in the two. Easy dismissal of a crowd who didn't recognize themselves in the indictment. I knew you'd say that flew back from someone, and the murmur was agreement, and the agreement was the residue of a generation so fluent in its own righteousness it couldn't hear the interview. God was conducting through Noah's mouth. He said the door would close and the few inside will be the only few, and the word few landed in the residue of the laughter and dissolved. The woman said few, meaning you and your sad crew. When her neighbor laughed and Noah felt the particular loneliness of the truth thing land in this comedy. Come, he said the word God used, not go, but come into the vessel before the door is closing. To come was the most intimate residue of grace in the whole narrative. God inviting, not commanding. The door still open and the view still available. They went home to dinner, went to bed. In the evening fell and grew. In the morning was ordinary, and the ordinary was the residue of a mercy they mistook for permanence. Then the 7 days were through, and Yahweh shut them in 4 words. The door closed from the outside, and the view from inside was upward only. The crowd that laughed was now the residue of everything the water was coming for. The sermon wasn't Noah's, it was God's, and God's come through eventually in one form or another. The only question was never if, but who was listening when it did. And only Noah was left, and the only was the residue. Yeah. Yahweh said, come into the ark, come not go. The preposition was a sermon. God already inside the vessel when he issued the invitation to the remnant. 7 pairs of clean animals, a pair of every animal not clean. Even the unclean got a birth graces, not a bouncer. Checking pedigree, the net was not spent. In 7 days I was sending rain, 7 days awaiting the pause before the judgment was a mercy. One final week the world didn't know was heaven sent. Noah did all that Yahweh commanded. Twice the text repeated it. The redundancy was the portrait of man whose yes was yes, without the footnote or the warrant. 600 years old, 6 centuries of breath about to watch the world he lived in become a different element. The family into the household was the vessel within the vessel. That the domestic was the unit of salvation. The ordinary was the sacrament. 2 and 2 they went in the pairs with the grammar of survival. The syntax of a civilization compressed into a boat in nascent. The lion walked past the lamb and neither reached grace. Reorganized the food chain for the length of a gangway without a management consultant. Every creature Adamain now boarding a vessel built by its descendant. The naming and the saving with the same dominion and a different implement. And Yahweh shut him in 4 words, the most underrated sentence in the flood. God closed the door, Noah couldn't reach it. The ceiling was an appointing of grace. From the outside the him was Noah, but the end was everyone sealed inside of mercy. They did not construct or do the bolting. The door closed from the outside, no one inside could open it. No one outside could enter the mercy. Had a deadline and God held the coding. Imagine standing at that door on the outside 7 days before the rain, watching God close it, knowing you were watched the building and kept floating through your ordinary life, eating, drinking, marrying. Until the day Noah entered the ark, the normalcy was the noting. The judgment didn't arrive with a theatrical announcement. It arrived with water behind the most ordinary week in history. The mundane was the cloaking. The vice, the fountains of the great deep burst forth. The water didn't rise, it detonated upward, and the windows of heaven were opening. 2 sources simultaneously above and below. The cosmos was a container. God pulled the stopper and removed the lid. The architecture of creation invoking judgment against itself. The water separated on day 2, now reunited. The order of creation running in reverse. The calendar we're making now revoking. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose the verb of resurrection deployed before the resurrection. Salvation elevated through the soaking, and only Noah was left and those with him. Only the loneliest and most hopeful word in the flood. Not zero, not finish, not the end. Only means the line kept going. Yeah. 40 days of rain, and the vessel never wavered, never swayed off the grade of the plane God laid in the gopher wooden pitch in the frame of the arcade. 8 souls on a floating grave of the world I used to navigate before the cascade turned the landscape to a waterscape and everything was raised. Noah on the deck at night, listen to the rain, put the pitch in the creek of the timber like a hymn that the ocean was amazed to be singing beneath him. Every animal beneath him, every creature that breathed in the dark beneath him, dreaming and unfazed by the drowning world outside the hull. Imagine the sound of the water against the wood, muffling the sound of a world being erased. Every city, every field, every face of every neighbor who had laughed at the construction now replaced by the surface of a planetary basin glazed with silence. No birds on the water, no wind in the trees, no leaves, no breeze, no sound of humanity, just the groan of the vessel as it raised. Another cubit on a swelling. Noah felt the weight of being the only man alive who knew what it meant to be praised by obedience. The ark was the sermon and he preached it for a century, and nobody came, and now the congregation was erased, and he was left with 8 in the lion and the lamb and every crawling thing, and the promise from the one who'd orchestrated in the praise. The whole arrangement, the smell alone would break you. Manure and mud and wet fur and feet of wood and pitch in the haze, a salt air seeping through the seams, and 8 people sharing the weight of a world on a boat in the days of grief and gratitude simultaneously. The survivor's paradox was real before the psychologists had given it a phrase. Noah was saved, and everyone he'd ever known outside his household was beneath the waterline, and the grace was real, but so was the loss, and both of them were sitting in the dark of the ark in the same space. God remember Noah, that's how the text put it. God remember like the flood was so consuming, even heaven had to pause and locate the face of the one he sealed inside the vessel. Remember this and forget and recall his covenant language as God returned into the case he'd opened and committed to when God sent the wind over the earth and the waters began to subside at a measured pace. The fountains closed, the windows shut, the rain stopped, and for the first time in 40 days the sky had a face. And Noah on the deck looked up at the clearing in the silence after judgment is a particular kind of grace. After 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made and sent the raven out, and the raven flew to and fro across the face of the water waiting. Then he sent the dove, and the dove found a resting place, returned to the ark, to the hand that had been patiently anticipated. 7 days he waited, sent her out again, and this time she came back with an olive leaf fresh plucked, and he knew the water was abating. 7 more days, sent her out a third time, and she didn't return, and the silence of her absence was a kind of celebrating. Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry, and the word behold was doing the narrating of a man who hadn't seen the earth in over a year, standing at the edge of the vessel looking at dry ground and contemplating everything. God said, go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives, the same age who brought it now evacuating. Bring out every living thing of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing, the inventory of the saved, now liberating into a world that was empty and new and terrifying and vast, and the silence of a depopulated planet was reverberating through every valley, every mountain, every plain that used to hold a city now was holding nothing but the weight of the waiting. Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives, and every beast, every creeping thing, every bird, everything propagated out of the ark by families, and the word families was the whole theology. Right there, the unit of salvation, now the unit of repopulated. Then Noah built an altar, first thing he did with his feet on dry ground, not a house, not a city, not a field, but a place for consecrating. The survival itself, the altar was the theology of the first act. The worship preceded the agriculture, the sacred came before the cultivating. He took of every clean animal and every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. The cost of the worship was participated in the same economy of blood that had clothed Adam and Eve in the garden, the skin covering the nakedness, the sacrifice perpetuated. The pattern Yahweh smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man, even though the heart of man is evil from his youth and frustrated. Truth was embedded in the promise. God made the covenant knowing the problem hadn't been solved. Just survive, the human heart was still oscillating between the sacred and the ruin. And God looked at that and said never again. The grace wasn't conditional on our improving, it was unconditional and saturated. Every future failure in advance, the rainbow wasn't a reward for righteousness, it was a mercy for the incorrigible. And God signed it by illuminating. From 3 sons of Noah, the whole earth was repopulated. The math of grace was 8 souls and 70 nations out, and nobody anticipated. The multiplication, Shem, Ham, Japheth, 3 branches. From one root the arborist was God, and every nation on the map was what he cultivated. Japheth spread coast with his sons, became the coastland peoples, each with their own language, clan, and territory designated. The islands received them, the same waters that erased the world, now framing the shores where the survivors were situated. Ham went south and west, his son Nimrod rose, the first mighty man on earth, a mighty hunter before Yahweh, before the preposition indicated. A competition, not a devotion. Nimrod hunting in the presence of God. The way a man performs for an audience, he's never quite placated. His kingdom started in Babel. Babel, the same plane where the tower fell. Nimrod built an empire from the rubble of what God had confiscated. The audacity was architectural. He took the monument of human failure and made it a foundation. The ambition was never truly terminated, just relocated. Erich and the cat and count, rising from the Sinai dust, the same dirt that absorbed the language God had complicated. Now growing cities, the ground that swallowed the confusion was the ground. The next civilization was being excavated. From the Canaanites spread toward Sidon, toward Gaza, toward Sodom and Gomorrah. The geography was being populated with names that would later be synonymous with fire. They were settling into addresses they didn't know were already incinerated. In the future tense, the table of nations was a map of coming judgments. Every city, a story God had already narrated. Before it happened, the names were the prophecy, the locations were the ledger, and the ledger was annotated with consequence. Then Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, the line, the covenant was threatened through unabated. Eber, the root of the word Hebrew, hidden in the genealogy, was the name of the people God had designated. Before they had a nation, before they had a land, before they had a law, the identity was being quietly germinated. Inside a table of 70 nations, like a seed inside a field, the promise was invisible and underestimated by everyone reading the list. Every passport, every border, every language, every flag, every anthem ever celebrated traces back to 3 brothers on a boat, and the God who signed the sky with color to confirm the covenant he generated. Yeah. I have done things in the shadow of the night, the weight, the stain, the grain of it pressed deep into the bone of what I witnessed. Blood, I can't unspill a name. I broke a chain of trust. I choked into the covenant I swore became the listless echo of a man I used to think I was the altar and the animal, the flame, the claim, the same old gifted animal that never seems to match the mountain of the guilt, the hilt, the guilt of what I missed and breathless. Mercy feels like rain on someone else's field. I've tried the priest, the beast, the least, the east, facing altar witness. Nothing changing in the chest, so if the blood won't lift it and the word won't shift it and the listless ritual won't clear it, then I build it. Hide it something I can manufacture, gifted or not. I'll lay the stone, the groan, the bone, deep labor of the breathless. Climb towards something clean, the tower is my pen, and stacked in stone and witnessed by everyone, which makes it real, which makes the reaching and the restless ascending feel like more than just a private war of guilt. I've lifted every stone like a confession, every course a brick of breathless absolution I constructed for myself. But guilt is not a thing that's sifted out by altitude. It travels in the chest, is weightless in the sense that no stone bears it off. 10 stories and I've lifted 10 stories worth of shame alongside the listless progress of the self-atoning soul is always sifted through its own hands and found too breathless, too thin, too built on the wrong foundation. I've witnessed what no stone can do, the restless soul can't build its way to grace. It must be gifted grace from outside, from the breathless. Generosity of the one who waits above the tower. I've witnessed nothing yet, but the breaking of the language was the listless. Everybody's building, so I grabbed a break the paper, think of it familiar in the grip. The slip into the crowd felt right, felt like a fit. Didn't ask what we were building toward the horde, the Lord of the consensus was the crowd, and I submitted to the crowd. They said heaven, and I thought heaven sounds like somewhere in the permitted. Dream of it was enough. I lay my brick beside the man beside me and committed to the shape the project needed, which became the shape I needed. I admit it. No original opinion, offered nothing from the stuff that wasn't knitted. From the fabric of the group, the tower gave me context fitted. Me with coordinates gave me something I could point at and admit it. It's purpose, Bible purpose, it's still purpose, still the land is quitted. The arrangement, nobody told me why, just how when I submitted. How was detailed, I was missing the mission, why I omitted. From the daily labor like a low barren wall, and I permitted the omission. Then the language broke mid-sentence and transmitted nothing to the man beside me that he knew. The knitted fabric of the we unraveled thread by thread and with it. Every borrow stuff I built, the crowd that fitted. Me with shape now shapeless, now emitted. Sounds I couldn't parse and I submitted. One last time to scatter ease because they did it. And the last conformity of all committed. With the scattering, a life that never knitted. It don't seem there's nothing left when the crowd is quitted. The project I was scattered and I permitted. If the way I permitted everything acquitted. A man walked up beside me, watched me later break the click, the thick familiar rhythm of the work and said, what are you building, friend? And I said, I don't know exactly, but the crowd ahead knows. And the crowd ahead said, heaven in the trend. Seemed worth the follow when he said, heaven sounds ambitious. I said, ambitious is the blend of everyone around us doing it. He picked the brick up, turned it in his hand and said, can I attend to this? What you and I said, show the shore came fast. The way the shore comes when you learn to bend into whatever shape the moment as he laid his brick beside my brick and the amend. A one became a two and two became a reason and a reason drew a third around the bend. Who asked, what are you building? And we said heaven, now with more conviction than the first in pen. They get into the answer like we'd always known. The third one brought a fourth, the fourth a friend. The friend brought three, and three became the kind of crowd that doesn't need to comprehend. The why to feel the certainty, somebody started singing and the blend. And the voices made it feel like worship, and the feeling of the worship was enough to recommend the project to the next arrival and the next. Nobody asked, nobody tried to contend with the logic. Nobody built the thread of why the thread would fray and fend off the whole arrangement if you pulled it. So we didn't pull it, we just tend to leave the load-bearing questions in the wall. The woman joined and said, what does this transcend? And somebody said, everything. And she said, good, and laid a brick and we ascend together now, a congregation of the youngest and the young question. Then the pen, then by consensus, the tower was the answer to a question nobody could defend or name. The crowd was the theology, the motion was the creed, the blend of bodies moving upward was the prayer. We didn't know that sin can recommend itself through company that it can dress in the collective and extend. It reached through every casual shore, through every brick, through every friend. We bring into the project, we built together toward a heaven none of us could apprehend. I laid the first brick for the click, felt the motor grip a stick, felt the weight predict what the summit would depict, and I knew I was born to rise. These hands split stone from mountain, pulled the pine. The line of design was mine, the climb was mine, the shrine was mine, and built for these same eyes that see what others miss. The gap, the map, the overlap between the earth and heaven is the size of a man's refusal to accept the cap, the trap, the gap that mediocrity disguises destiny. I stacked 10,000 bricks, each click, each grip, each lift, the fresh reprise of the argument my body made against the limit. Every course of stone comprises a sentence in the sermon on my hands, and the sermon never compromises, never softens, never stoops. They said the height would break the weight, would shake the plate beneath the structure. I said pressure was the price of greatness, let it accumulate. The weight, the rate, the freight of expectation I will carry and create something permanent from it. They built the guy from clay, and shit, I let them venerate my name instead. The God of clay can't lift the stone, can't set the grade, can't calibrate the angle of ascent the way these hands can. I will not supplicate, not prostrate, not present myself as left in what I've proven I can demonstrate through labor. If God is at the top, I'll introduce myself, I won't conflate his altitude with his authority. Altitude is something I can replicate with sufficient brick and tar. They say God scattered Babel, let them speculate on why I say a God who has to come down to see a tower had to calculate the threat assessment in the threat was proximity. Power cannot tolerate another power climbing toward it. It will always legislate the distance back. The language broke before I reached the top, but let them annotate the ruined and unfinished tower that made God move is taller than the ornate finished temples of the men who never tried. I built, therefore I will not abdicate. The claim, the scattered man who built his way to heaven's gate needs no advocate. Yeah. The whole earth had one language, one lip, one lexicon, one set of syllables to split the difference between the human and the divine. And they used it. Journeyed east, found a plane in Shinar, settled on the land and said, let us make bricks, let us build, let us fuse it. Brick for stone and tar for mortar, the substitution was the statement. They weren't building with what God had made, they were choosing to refuse it. Come let us build a city in a tower whose top reaches heaven. The ambition was architectural, the theology was confusing. Let us make a name for ourselves lest we be scattered. The motive was the monument, the fear dispersal produced. The irony was surgical, the very thing they built to prevent became the thing to build and introduced. And God came down to see the city in the tower. Came down, the tower reaching heaven, and God had to descend to even view it. The comedy was cosmic, they were building to the sky, and the sky's architect had to stoop beneath the clouds just to review it. Behold, they are one people with one language, and this is only the beginning of what they would do it. Nothing will be impossible for them. God wasn't threatened, he was diagnosing the trajectory of a unified humanity pursuing its own glory, and the diagnosis was a mercy, not a fear. Come, let us go down and confuse their language. God said it and he knew it. Was scattered with the unity, it built the same us from the garden, now descending on the tower to undo it. So Yahweh dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth. The scattering they feared became the seconds they accrued it. By pursuing the opposite, they said lest we scatter, so they built, and building was the thing that blew it. They left off building the city, not because they ran out of brick or tar or wheel, but because the word was fluid. Suddenly a foreign syllable where a familiar one had been the tongue of your brother, now a sound you never knew it. Could make a imagine mid-sentence reaching for a word that your whole life you owned, and finding nothing where the language used to be loose. The tower stood unfinished in the plain of Shinar, monument to the moment when the human project overstepped and blew it. There's one advantage. The name of it was called Babel because they Yahweh confused the language. Babel meaning confused, and they construed it as an ending, but the scattering was always the commission. The nations were the plan, and Babel was the painful way God moved it. Yeah. Son of Cush, the blood, the mud, the flood, the start of a new world, the crud of the old, wash clean, and Nimrod rose his canvas. The whole post-flood earth, the girth, the worth, the birth of empire in his chest before a single city measured its vastness. Gibber the Hebrew, the warrior, the hero, the zero, the summit, the plummet, proof the ruthless and the harness of a will that bent the world around its warning. The text gave him 10 verses in the darkness. Underneath him is the point, mighty hunter before Yahweh, the before, the floor, the score, the sharpness of that proposition splitting scholars, performance, the defiance, the compliance, or the starkness of a man who hunted in God's sight and didn't flinch. The field, the yield, the sealed fate of every creature in his radius, the skill, the kill, the thrill, the filled quiver of a man who never missed, and the wretched cat counted revealed. Rising on the plain of Shinar, the same dust, the same crust, the same healed. Over wound of Babel's demolition, the gall, the call, the wall, the kneel. Foundation built on judgment's rubble, Nineveh, Rehoboth, Caleb peeled. For the blueprint of a mind that saw a plain and saw a throne in the decree. The first consolidation of the scattered, the hunt, the front, the stun, the free. Men corralled into a kingdom. Nimrod didn't hunt for food, he hunted for the key to the oldest lock, the compliance of the many bit toward the one in the degree. God gave Adam dominion, the commission, the permission, the position of every swimming, crawling, flying thing. Know why? Authority of the image bearer, the grace, the place, the space, the face of creation, all applied to the creature made of dust, the grant, the plant, the slant of the mandate was ecological, the tide moving outward from the man toward creation, not inward toward the ones who stood beside him. Nimrod took the axis, flipped the script, the grip, the rip of the display of power inward. The mighty hunter and the prey, the breathe, the way the same of the hunted are the same story, different floors, the glory and the resume of greatness over men is domination, dressed in the ornate, the ornament, the pay of empire and human freedom. Eve ate wisdom, Adam ate for love. The wound of Cain was personal, but Nimrod scaled the wound, the sound, the ground, the commune of the broken into institution, the rock, the plot, the knock, the moon becoming sun, same light, categorically different burn, and the tone of his kingdom was the anthem every empire hummed. The stone, the throne, the weight, the straight line from Shinar to every crown, the grant, the plant, the slant of the state, forgetting its own purpose is the Nimrod era, the terror, the bearer of the gate between the gift of authority and the rod of it. And Nimrod sealed it straight. Yeah. Babylon rose, same plane, same dust, same lust, same thrust to the ascending and the lasting. Nebuchadnezzar the furnace, the image, the golden, the sudden, the brazen, the casting. The Nimrod mold in Babylonian metal, the blasting, the contrasting. Trumpet at the dedication was the same sermon Noah heard while fasting. From the crowd's approval, Assyrian next to iron, the teeth, the chest, the grinding of the nation under the machine. Never the great Nimrod city finding its way into the mouth of Jonah's dread, the binding, the winding of judgment to geography of the city, and the sentence always finding each other. Egypt took the sons of Shem and put them to the lasting labor. The brick, the mud, the blood that stood the casting of the human body is resource. The whip, the trip, the drip, the blasting. The Pharaoh's logic through the centuries, the same Nimrod contrasting. Sophistication of Rome arrived. The census, the tax, the wax, the flag, the cross on the hill, the build, the kill, the fill of the same bag with different contents. Every empire, every throne, a different drag. Race on the same track. The lead runner sets the lag. Nimrod is not a relic, not a footnote, but a frequency, a grammar, a pattern, a recurring mode of organizing power from the labor of the powerless, the road, the code, the load. He built from China outward is the road. Every empire since is followed in the ode of the powerful has always been the same. Dominion sold as a bestow. Benevolence never named the theft, the board, the core, the lord, the glow and screen, the algorithm, the platform, in the different materials, the showing of the face of power changes, but the face beneath keeps knowing what it wants to scatter, the gather, the corralling, and the slowing of the free into the manage, the name, the claim, the frame, the phrase that built the tower, built the empire, built the platform, built the maze of the attention economy, the hunt, the front, the stunt, the craze of the personal brand is Nimrod in the different A's of lighting. But God who stooped to see the tower in the mold, the unimpressed still sees the pattern, still corrodes against his patience, and the judgment always loads slowly and arrives completely. Nimrod's empire in the road.